Well, this one's a bit different. You see, a long nice time ago, I recorded this Halo 4 video, and as I was writing my current reviews, I found the audio on my PC and I thought, wow, I can be lazy and just use this. So here we are. There'll probably be some big cuts and maybe some new segments, but most of what you hear is old audio from what feels like an eternity ago. So without any further delays, here we go. I've played Halo for a long time. Ever since I became aware of it, I've played every game I could get. And I learned that Bungie was going to be stepping away. You know, I was disappointed, but at the same time, this prospect of a new studio, a studio focused only on Halo, even their name was a reference to it. Not too long after Bungie departed, we got a first glimpse of Halo 4. I thought it looked kinda cool. I didn't understand why Master Chief looked white. In fact, I still don't, but I was excited. And eventually when it came out, I managed to snag a copy from a local game for only 40 quid. I had no idea why it was that cheap. Soon, however, I realised exactly why it was discounted. I got home and I booted it up. It just wasn't as good as Reach. I played the first level, got halfway through the second and gave up. After that I played the multiplayer once or twice, some Forge with my cousin, but that was it. I didn't play Halo 4 much. In fact, I pretty much immediately went back to Reach. I don't remember thinking that 4 was awful. Only it was kinda meh. Even when I got an Xbox One with MCC, I still didn't play it. Flash forwards to 2020 and the pandemic hits, and to use up all his spare time, my pal shouts himself the goal of getting all the trophies in Batman Arkham games. Inspired by him, I set out on my own quest to 100% Halo MCC. Since then, I've put a shit ton of time in, and we're getting close. I've got about 40 achievements left. I mean, it sounds like quite a few, but it's no, trust. Of course, MCC having all the mainline Halos, I had to play 4, and that's what's led me to making this video. So, the question must be asked, would I hate it as much as I did in the day? Or would I find a whole new perspective in the game? Based on the title, I think we know which is more likely. Right, so talking about the game, let's start with probably the best part, the plot. Master Chief and Cortana are still in space after Halo 3, in what appears to be a totally different ship than they ended Halo 3 in. Apparently it's the same one, but they're no fooling me. This may be the first time they make a change for zero reason, with it only serving to break the immersion, but I can guarantee you, it's no the last. Our heroes are in their ship, years after Halo 3, and Cortana feels a disturbance in the Force. She wakes Chief, and her suspicions are correct. They're being attacked, but by who? The Covenant, of course. Wait, the Covenant? What about Halo 3? We'll get back to that later, I'm sure. So Chief fights the attacking Covies, launches some nukes, gets sucked into Unicron, Requiem. What is Requiem, you may ask? Doesn't really explain what it is in the game. Chief and Cortana land in the wreckage of their ship on Requiem, and Chief notices that there appears to be something up with Cortana. He's not quite sure what, and she's hesitant to talk about it, but we learn later on in the game that she's going rampant, which is basically when an AI runs out of storage and starts going mad. Chief pushes on, trying to find a way out, till he runs into some Prometheans. What's a Promethean? Well, it's a Forerunner robot, and they serve as the main antagonists of the game. They come in several shapes and sizes, and they're a bitch. More on that later. Chief and Cortana start to receive jumbled up transmissions from a UNSC ship called the Infinity. She tries to find a way to contact it through Requiem, but unfortunately he ends up being confronted by the Omega Skin from Fortnite, who reveals himself, in fact, to be Voldemort, before using his force powers to throw Chief and turn all the robots orange. By the way, his name's a Didact, and I guess he's kind of important. Also, the Didact and all the Prometheans are now besties with the Covenant, so you have double the enemies to fight. Chief nopes right out of there, and the Didact turns into one of those bionicles that turn into the balls, flies away. The Infinity turns up to try and save Chief, but for whatever reason it crashes. I think he gets sucked in by Requiem. And the tables turn. Now the Infinity are the ones that need saving. Chief moves to a jungle where he finds a bitchy Spartan and the most plain man in history. They fight some dudes and they fly to the Infinity where Chief decides he's going to pull a Metal Gear out of his arse to try and clear out the Didact and his forces. This leads to the first scene where we meet our secondary antagonist of the game, Captain Del Rio. All you need to know about him,
He's an asshole for no reason and believes the exact opposite of good in every situation. You see, the Infinity's been sucked real hard by Requiem, so Chief needs to turn off the vacuum setting in order to let Infinity leave. So he takes the latter to go destroy some cannons and the thickest phantom ever before encountering the worst part of the story, the Librarian. Basically, Chief talks to the ghost of the Didact's wife and learns that the Didact is a big gun that turns humans into Prometheans. But the Chief's safe from it because she implanted a gene song in humanity and activated it in Chief? I don't know, shit gets wild with this scene. She also kind of implies that she plans out almost every single invention that's ever been created in the universe for like the last 150,000 years. But that's okay. Chief tells Del Rio about this, but he gives zero shits and just says, yeah, I want to leave. Cortana goes mad and Del Rio orders for her to be killed, but nobody actually gives a shit. Plane Boy Lasky gives Chief a plane, and they go to stop the Didact. They fly a bit, and then follow the Didact to a Halo ring. Oh wait, shit, a Halo ring. That's the thing. It's the game, the name, the title. Turns out there's now labs studying all the rings. This ring in particular has an artifact being studied, which turns out to be the Composer. Remember the robot maker gun? Yeah, now the Didact's about to get it. Chief and the now clinically insane Cortana try to stop the Didact, but he has the gun and heads to Earth to create a huge army to do something. He doesn't really have a goal, I don't think, other than some vague form of revenge. Chief pulls out his saber knockoff and flies with a nuke to go destroy the Didact and the Composer. After slogging through gaming's worst ever mission, Chief makes it to the Didact, but his force powers are too strong, so Cortana has to use Shadow Clone Jutsu to save Chief. He kills the Didact, blows up the nuke, and boom, he's gone. But he's not gone, he's Chief. Suddenly Chief is amping it up, and a life-size Cortana there. Then she dies. The end. Well, wasn't that something? I mean, where do you even start? I guess we'll get the good part out of the way. The dynamic of Chief and Cortana in this game was actually pretty good, although some of her dialogue is kind of weird. Chief becoming more human and speaking in game for the first time was good. You know, it made him feel like a character, and that last scene where he speaks to Lasky about Cortana, how she compared him to a robot, it's genuinely one of my favourite scenes in Halo. It's actually heartbreaking to see Chief, you know, the bastion of hope and humanity, but he's alone more than he ever was. He's got his one friend is gone. The idea of a sequel showing Chief trying to deal with Cortana's death and having to cope with the fact that he's essentially been a robot his whole life, that'd be cool. Yeah, I mean, we kind of got something like that with Halo Infinite at points, but never quite what was seemingly set up in 4. Now the only good part's done, let's get to the bad parts. Starting us off, we have the Covenant. Remember in Halo 3, well, the Covenant was basically wiped out because most of them were either killed in the Ark, killed in High Charity, or had aligned with the UNSC. Well, 343 don't, because we're straight back into fighting elites, grunts, jackals and hunters again. Is there any explanation for this in the game? No. But, you know, I guess a lot can happen in 6 years. Also, for some reason the Covenant look different, and elites are about double the height they used to be. The Forward Unto Dawn also changes into a huge, entirely different ship than it was in Halo 3. Maybe it was just nanobots. Right, Frank? Moving on from terrible changes to the world, how about a character? Let's go with Del Rio. Del Rio may as well be the worst character to ever feature in a Halo game. I mean, he's an asshole, and not a compelling one. When he appears on screen, he only serves to make you want to turn the game off. All he does is make the worst possible decisions while screaming his head off. He means nothing to the plot, and I'm serious, there are no consequences for Chief disobeying him. And then the last level, Lasky goes in and is like, oh yeah, we just get rid of him, you know? They actually pulled a Putchy died on the way back to his home planet. They mutiny him. And as shown in Halo 5, no one in the greater UNSC actually gives a shit. If they'd given Del Rio good reasons and had him make more realistic decisions and actually created consequences for Chief going against his orders, then he could have been a good character, but he's just the most generic, angry military leader. It's a boring trope and it's executed particularly badly here. Well, the Infinity isn't all bad. What about Lasky? What about Lasky? He's barely in the game, and apart from the ending cutscene, all he does is be the good guy with no personality. He isn't like Johnson or Keyes, He shows basically no emotion whatsoever until the last cutscene. He isn't a bad character per se, he's just bland. Just a plain piece of toast. Rarely other Halo games were their main villains, Guilty Spark and his cold robotic actions, the prophets and their adherence to a religion they created. These were interesting villains with personalities. They were present in their games. The Didact's in about 2 cutscenes in Halo 4, barely speaks until the last level, and most of the players' understanding of him comes from one overly confusing exposition dump of a cutscene. Out with the load dump scene, the Didact means nothing. He basically has no motivation other than revenge, but you don't even get to see it from his perspective, only his wife's. Oh yeah, the librarian's his wife. I wouldn't blame you for not knowing, because you only find this out if you watch the terminals. These terminals show more backstory, including how the Didact ended up in his big ball. You see, the librarian shot him and sealed him up in it, assuming, despite her intelligence, that maybe when he got out of it, he'd just magically become good and love her again. This means somehow she's smart enough to program the existence of Spartans into human DNA, and yet couldn't figure out that shooting her husband and sealing him in a ball for thousands of years wouldn't make him a good guy again. This is the kind of shitty writing that plagues almost all 343 games. But don't worry, we don't have to deal with the other games yet. But that isn't even the most egregious failure in the writing. The most egregious failure in the writing. That would go to the Forerunners. Yes, the Librarian and the Didact are Forerunners. Now what's the issue here? They're not human. In fact, the Didact hates humans. He turns them into robots. He waged a goddamn war against them. This destroys the Halo canon. In Halo 1 and 2, it was teased that Forerunners were ancient humans, and in Halo 3, outright stated by 343 Guilty Spark. And yet, they got this wrong in Halo 4. And it all pretty much comes down to one man, Frank O'Connor. One of the few people to jump ship from Bungie to 343, Frank O'Connor's decided against all previous information that Forerunners were a separate species to humans. Frank was part of the team that wrote the Halo 3 terminals, and hinted at this and them. He also included the Didact and the Librarian in them, and then parts of them were contradicted by Halo 4, so he couldn't even get his own headcanon right when he was working on Halo 4. This changes the motivations of the Covenant, breaks dialogue, and removes one of the best twists in gaming. Halo 4 isn't just bad on its own, it actively tries to destroy the legacy of the games that came before it. Many more words could be spent on the plot and characters of this game, but rather than continuing to retread the same ground, why not move on to perhaps the most controversial part of the game, the art. It was apparent from the initial reveal that this game would have a much different art style than Halo 3. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, for instance, Halo Reach had a different art style, but it was still clearly Halo. Halo 4, on the other hand, it's just wrong. It looks too different, and certain things are too weird. And on top of the drastic design changes, they tried to make it part of the lore. But in Halo Infinite now, some of the design changes don't carry over, so maybe they're not canon. Chief's armour is too bulky, the Jackals are now scaly and resemble dinosaurs, the Elites are way too tall and have their faces messed around with, and the poor grunts. They now have huge mouths with these gigantic sharp teeth, their heads are almost square and their armour is a horrible shape, these bulbous round tumours coming out of their backs. The game also lacks any colours. Almost everything has a grey tint to it. It becomes depressing to look at after 20 seconds of playing. The only time there's a great deal of colour is when you're in a Forerunner structure. And then it's just because they get really bright neon lights. They're either orange or blue. These lights end up being way too much, and they conflict with the previously established art style for Forerunner buildings where they had way more subtle lighting. On top of the bland grey filter over everything, half the environments are grey anyway, so the game's doubly as boring. It's seriously like they had a contest to see who at the office could fuck up Halo the hardest, which, considering the way they hire people, may not be too far from the truth. Okay, so the art isn't great, but that doesn't matter if the gameplay's good, right? Maybe, but the gameplay isn't good either. Let's start by evaluating each of the game's weapons. To begin with, we have the assault rifle. It remains similar to Halo 3 but less powerful, leaving it as a weapon of last resort. The DMR is one of the few useful weapons, but packing enough power to wipe out elites or knights fairly quickly. The lack of ammo supplies mean it can't often be relied on though. The pistol is useless. Moving on. The sniper rifle. You see these so rarely, I'm not even sure there's one in the campaign. Regardless, they seem to be much harder to aim than they are in Reach, with way more recoil and less damage. The shotgun is useless. It has a pitiful range and a pitiful shell count, so you just can't use it. The battle rifle is a worse version of the DMR. It's mostly the same, but doesn't seem to have the same time to kill, making it a second choice for a precision weapon. The railgun is the Spartan laser, but harder to use. Don't bother with it. The sticky detonator. It's cool in concept, but has few gameplay uses. It also barely appears in the game, so don't bother picking it. The rocket launcher remains similar to Reach, useful in certain situations, but the lack of ammo means most of the time it's useless. The Spartan laser is still really, really cool, and also really, really useless for taking out anything but turrets or hunters. Frag grenades are mostly identical to other games, but they do slightly less damage. And our final UNSC weapon, the SAW. This is probably my favourite addition. It has a huge mag, does a shit ton of damage, fires really fast, and do you know what? For once in this game, looks really cool. Moving on to Covenant weapons, we get the Energy Sword, still the wonderful insta-kill blade it used to be, so it gets a pass. The Needler does a lot of damage, and super combines really fast, but there's very little ammo for it a lot of the time. The Storm Rifle is terrible. Imagine the Plasma Rifle from the old games, mixed with the Assault Rifle. It doesn't do enough damage to justify picking it up, especially when its energy drains so quickly. The Carbine makes a return, but it isn't quite as powerful as it used to be. It's okay if you need a precision weapon and you're out of DMR ammo, but it's not first choice. The Plasma Pistol is probably the biggest downgrade of any weapon in gaming history. It does less damage than before, and its battery drains, get this, 10 times as fast. I mean seriously, how do you fuck up a gun that badly? The plasma grenades are still cool, so I'm nothing new here. The gravity hammer is for some reason here, even though there's no brutes. I presume just so it could be in Grifball. And it only ever appears in one room in the campaign, but it can admittedly be useful there, so it's okay. The fuel rod cannon remains in the game. There tends to be quite a lot of ammo for it, but it does a piss poor amount of damage, so it doesn't really matter. The beam rifle makes its return. It still does a good amount of damage, but it runs out of battery very quickly. And capping off the Covenant list is the concussion rifle. 2 words: don't bother. Finally, we have the Forerunner weapons. Kicking us off is the light rifle, which is a DMR. Next up is the suppressor, which is an assault rifle. The scatter shot is a shotgun? Wait, what? How could they possibly not think of any new guns that don't function identically to others? I mean, what else do we have? The bolt shot? It's a pistol. The binary rifle? No, it's a sniper. Incineration cannon? I guess it's kind of different because it's not just a rocket launcher. It's a shit rocket launcher. Seriously, the guns in this game suck, and the campaign doesn't make it any better, with a lack of variety and the apparent ammunition shortage. Even if there was more ammo for the unique weapons, it wouldn't be of much use, because the only ones you're ever going to need are the DMR and the light rifle. These two are the most effective against the enemies, and are both practically the same gun, making combat a boring, samey experience. Speaking of which, we should probably take a look at the enemies now. As mentioned previously, the game consists of 2 sets of enemies, the Prometheans and the Covenant. The Covenant remain mostly unchanged from their previous appearances, sans brutes and buggers. For the most part, combat against the Covenant is similar to the old games, except for a few mind-boggling changes. For one, a whole lot more of them have fuel rod cannons now, making a lot of short-range encounters difficult when you get blown up the moment you approach. Elites seem to do more melee damage than they used to. And, oh yeah, and get used to having to look for cover to recharge your shields, because everyone is trigger happy with the overcharged plasma pistol shots. Add on to this the fact that beam rifle sniper jackals make their return, and needler projectiles now move faster, have better tracking, and super combine faster. You're going to be spending a lot of time behind cover, slowly picking off enemies from afar, with few fast-paced encounters. To make this worse, weapons despawn quicker than ever, so you might pick off a large group of enemies only to find that you can't stock up on their ammo because it's disappeared. The hunters in this game also have issues with the range of their melee attacks seemingly changing at a moment's notice. Overall, they're nowhere near the worst, but they're still not good. When I said combat hadn't changed much,
It was a lie.
oh, and just wait. Believe it or not, the combat against the Covenant, that's the good part. I mean, the Prometheans are awful. To the degree that I think the game testers must have not turned up to work, and the devs thought, oh fuck it, it's alright. The Prometheans are made up of only 3 enemy types. The Promethean Knight, the Crawler, and the Watcher. The Crawlers make up most of what you're going to be fighting. They're dog-like robots that run in packs and either shoot you or headbutt you in the shin. They can also run up walls, allowing them to be a further pain in the ass. Like those floods from Halo 3. Fucking hate those things. There are so many of them that you spend most of the game looking down at the floor. Not that you want to be looking at the environments anyway, but that's besides the point. They're the Promethean equivalent of grunts, except there are more of them, they don't flee, and most of them take 2 melees to kill. You might think to yourself, just shoot them in the head and there's an insta-kill. Well, unfortunately, most of the time it's a pain in the ass to hit them in the head. All these crawlers are grey and orange, as are all the weapons, as are all the enemies, as are all the environments, as are all the explosions, as are all the projectiles. This can make it pretty hard to discern where the head is, but even if you do find it, you're not guaranteed a headshot, because for some reason, most of the time, even if you hit the head, it doesn't work. Instead, you have to aim slightly above the head just to kill one of them. Oh yeah, and sometimes they give the crawlers binary rifles. So, yeah, thanks for the 343. Jesus, that's just one enemy. The Knights are even worse. They're the elite equivalent for the Prometheans. They're large, tough, and they have energy shields. The issue with these guys is that 343 tried to reinvent the elite. Knights have energy shields like an elite, but they recharge almost instantly. They have an insta-kill melee, just like the energy sword, but they can pull it out of nowhere, and they can teleport directly to the player, immediately sending them back to the last checkpoint. Oh, yeah, did I mention they can fucking teleport? Which means the moment they start taking damage from you, they teleport away to cover, wasting what little ammo you have left, and making the game a total pain in the ass. On top of that, they also don't die to an immediate headshot for some reason. Although their heads are so comically tiny, you'll have a hard time actually hitting one. This leaves the Watchers, who by the way, can be spawned in by Knights. These Tron looking bird things are the bane of my existence. These things often come in groups, and although their firepower isn't huge, in large amounts it can take you out quickly. They also have the ability to create crawlers, auto turrets, spawn in Knights, and revive dead Knights. This means you can have the situation where you see a Knight spawn a Watcher, you kill the Knight, and then the Watcher brings it back anyway. The game becomes frustrating, and the fact that enemies can be revived further erodes your ammo supply. Watchers aren't susceptible to headshots, I don't think, but they do have tiny little faces. The fuck is that about? Typically, they take a couple of DMR shots to kill. Watchers kill the gameplay, that is if it wasn't dead already. Taking away more is the lack of Marines in the game. They barely appear, they're even more useless than before. They die so fast, they can't even distract enemy fire to allow you to get some kills. This makes the game less fair, less lively, and just a bit shit. The gameplay ends up more bland than any previous entry. Maybe it can make up for some of the boredom it generates if it had interesting layouts, but it doesn't. The game is made up entirely of levels that happen indoors in tight corridors, removing the large open spaces from the previous games. This makes it hard for a player to try and take on an encounter from a different angle. This can not only make the game more difficult for newcomers, but it also removes variety from gameplay, making people unlikely to return for a second playthrough. But there is something If there's anything I can give the game credit for, it's the graphical fidelity. Although the art style itself isn't good, the lighting, textures, and the poly count do help the game to look really good sometimes. I don't think it has better lighting than Halo 3, but in this respect, do you know what? The game gets a pass. When I came in writing this script, I thought about breaking the game down level by level, going in depth, but really, I don't have much to say about a lot of them. So I decided to give a brief review of each level and go into detail when it matters. Starting off, Dawn. Tight corridors, but not too long, and has a cool looking set piece to end the level. 5 out of 10. Requiem. Shallow rip-off of Halo from the first game. Has a couple of annoying chunks where you have to fight Jackal snipers, but again, not the worst. 4 out of 10. Forerunner. Ruins the game by introducing the Didact and his cronies, but has some painful spaces filled with way too many enemies, and the second worst driving sequence in the series. No, I'm not joking. That shit sucks. Sometimes you just bounce and you don't land normally and it causes you to die. It's terrible. 2 out of 10. Infinity. Cool looking jungle until everything's foggy. Has an annoying sequence where you have to deal with waves of enemies, but getting to be in a UNSC ship again and piloting a Mantis was pretty cool, so 5 out of 10. Reclaimer. Slow mammoth sequence, boring generator destruction sequences, and that ass load dump cutscene. 2 out of 10. Shutdown. The world's worst new Alexandria ripoff. Flying a pelican's cool for the minute you actually spend doing it. Most of the level can be skipped by just flying to the end. If you do skip it, probably a 5 out of 10. If you play through and have to deal with the gondola sequences, 1 out of 10. Composer. Goes on for too long. Mantis sequence is a pain even on normal. The composer in fact looks cool, and there's some good dialogue between Chief and Cortana, so 4 out of 10. And finally, Midnight. Oh yeah, when I said I wanted to go into detail, I really only meant it for this level. It's the worst Halo level ever. Yeah, worse than 2 Betrayals, or the Library, worse than Coastal Highway, worse than the Gravemind on Legendary, worse than that goddamn Halo Wars level with civilians.
And here's why.
Midnight is so much more than a bad level. It's an awful level at the culmination of an awful game. It isn't just designed badly, it's unsatisfying as a way to end a game. The level starts with a sequence I see people raving about quite often. Why? I don't know. The broadsword flying sequence is cool in concept only. The execution is awful. You're stuck flying forward while objects hurl by you, given zero chance to react to some of them, without slowing down as much as you can. And if you do slow down, it removes the spectacle of the sequence. Even when you're slow, the controls of the broadsword are abysmal. They somehow manage to be both sensitive and entirely unreactive. Sometimes you'll attempt to pull up and your direction will barely change. Other times you'll try to fit through a tight gap by nudging the stick to the right, and you go so far you crash into a wall. And I forgot to mention, the broadsword is made out of glass. The moment it touches anything, even at a low speed, insta-kill. The checkpoints in this sequence also have a habit of not triggering, which can send you all the way back to the beginning for a death. Is that all?
Did you really think that was all?
This sequence also has a bunch of enemy turrets that shoot at you. The likelihood of them actually killing you on lower difficulties is quite low. The larger issue they create is that they're just another object for you to crash into and die. Seriously, it's like Venom in the hard path. Who designed this shit? There are also force field projector things you blow up. They cause issues. But worse than that is the barriers. Yeah, so far I've neglected to mention there is a shitload of invisible barriers and kill barriers in this game. But they don't really cause any issues until this level, where they're everywhere. Go too high, go too low, you run into these. I don't even understand why most of them are here. They just serve to limit the player in a sequence which is basically on rails. How the fuck do you even do that? The sequence also barely makes sense canonically with how long it goes on for, as well as the ways in which the Didact ship transforms. Near the end there's a bit where you blow up some generators or some shit and it's at least passable. Then we get a cutscene where a Mac Blast clears a hole for Chief to fly into, which, okay, if they need to destroy this thing, why not keep shooting it with Mac Blasts? Earth has orbital platforms to go along with the Infinity. Plus, I'm sure there's Mach-enabled frigates ready at a moment's notice, considering the shit the UNSC goes through. You're telling me the best plan is for Chief to fly inside the Composer with a nuke? Why would he try to fly inside it? It's such a dumb idea. Of course the broadsword's going to get smashed. Oh, and remember people, that's only the opening. The rest of the level has the player as Chief on foot, which means even more bland corridors, more grey, more orange, and God is it overkill. Every object, every surface, every enemy, every gun in this level is grey with orange highlights. Immediately as you're set on foot, you have to fight a bunch of watchers that are trying to create turrets. Then a group of knights. Then another group of knights, with watchers to revive the ones that you kill. You go down a lift, go through some portals, fight crawlers, fight a bunch more knights, go through more portals. Hell, there's a chunk of the level where the pace slows from a crawl to a standstill, as you're forced to defend against waves of crawlers. Who wanted that? No one. That's who. After you're done defending Cortana or whatever you're doing there, you have to cross the bridge that the crawlers were coming across to get to another portal. This would be fine, but when you get to the portal, more crawlers start spawning, which can seriously mess you up in harder difficulties. It also wastes more of your ammo. Remember that problem. At some point you'll make it to some little launcher thing, and here you are. This is a home stretch. The game for once gives you a bunch of ammo, but there are so many enemies in the next section, it was basically pointless. So now you have to launch yourself to a bunch of floating platforms where the Didact nukes Arizona. This is the worst part of the game, by far. At this point you're mentally exhausted by the level, and you're quickly about to run out of ammo because they throw so many enemies at you. Way too many enemies. You go up a ramp, you hit a button, it creates a bridge, and they spawn in more enemies. Like 6 or 7 knights, it's insane. And it feels like they just keep coming. Because they do. Eventually you make it past them to hit the important button. I don't know what it's doing. Then you have to be launched to another platform filled with enemies. Luckily if you're fast enough, you can run across it quickly to launch to the next platform. But you gotta be good. But the next one is pretty identical to the first, only it has more enemies. But you kill them, you move on, you activate the light bridge, and again a bunch more knights spawn in. Now you might not notice this part, but one of them spawns in with an incineration cannon. You know, the fucking insta-kill weapon. And he stands at the back of the crowd, waiting for you to kill the rest, only for him to ruin your day and send you back to the checkpoint before you activate the bridge. 'Cause fuck you. If you can manage to stomach that section, then you have one last hurdle. The last platform. It's only 3 knights, so it shouldn't be that bad, right? Well, by this point, you almost certainly don't have any ammo, and the last platform also lacks cover, so you better be tactical, or you could be stuck here a while. Once they're done, Cortana floats you up to the Didact, and it's time for a boss battle. Is what I'd say if there was one. But no, the Didact's about to kill you, because remember, he has the Force. Cortana clones herself, grabs him, he drops Chief, who somehow manages to grab a hold of the bridge, despite the fact he was nowhere near it. And you get the most sorry excuse for gameplay in history. You hold forward and watch as Chief very slowly crawls up. Then there's a quick time event where you ram a grenade in the Didact's face and he falls off the bridge. And for some reason, I have no idea, maybe it was a cut plot point, you know, the Chief feels sorry for him or something, but he tries to grab the Didact, I think. He tries to save him when he falls off the bridge. It's why? Why would you do that? Chief goes and activates the nuke, and that leads us into the final 3 cutscenes of the game. The first 2 are actually brilliant and the start of a real arc for Chief. The last is nonsensical and means nothing to anything. One more thing. The Didact, who just had the grenade blow up in his face, fell a huge distance into the beam of the Composer, a device that was subsequently nuked. Yeah, he survived. Yeah, somehow, I don't know. He's in some books, comics now, and he's alive. So you don't even get the satisfaction of knowing that you killed the enemy. You as a player and the character of Chief have achieved a whopping handful of nothing. Thanks 343, that's so cool. Completely undoing a character's death with zero good explanation removes the consequences of your story and removes the emotional impact those deaths may have had on the characters, but also the players. I had initially planned to include Spartanos and multiplayer in this review, but in the end I think they deserve their own video. Safe to say, I have some issues with this game. So many it made it hard to structure and write this video. Not only am I inexperienced with writing scripts, I also just couldn't stop thinking of more issues while writing. Like the Forerunner grenades, I forgot to include them. What even are they? What's the point? What's the point? But really at some point, I had to stop. The review was getting rambly as it was, so adding a bunch of new criticisms right in the middle of others would have just made it even worse. In conclusion, this game sucks. I honestly don't remember it being this bad, but after looking back, it's why I stopped playing it. I don't want to hate Halo 4. I have nostalgia for it, but the more I play, the worse it gets. I don't want to hate 343, but they've shown themselves to just be incapable of handling Halo. Every game under their tenure has sucked, even Infinite. We can only hope that one day a game developer will rise through the ranks and light Halo's darkest hour. But until they can deliver hope, all we can do is believe.
Well, I've not much other to say than that was shocking. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and tune in to my Christmas live stream on December the 15th. I'm out.